Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to now. Shows on the network are individually owned, and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Welcome to Fresh Air at 5, the podcast. I'm your host, Brian Carpenter. Fresh Air at 5 is my regular attempt to exercise by walking about my neighborhood to take in podcast content, then reflect in an unedited video, which I finally post to my Twitter channel. This podcast will be a regular collection of the audio from these selfie videos. You can follow me on Twitter at FreshAirAtFive or check out my website, briancarpenter.com, for other content I have created and collected. Hey, PLN, Monday, February 28, 2022. Welcome to the end of February. I can't believe how fast this short month has gone. Lots of great things have happened over the month. A lot of really hard things have happened over the course of this month. The month opened and got started with the Olympics. Fascinated with the Olympics, and I watched a lot of sport. Things that I wouldn't normally watch. I watched the women's Canadian hockey team win a gold medal in Beijing, and that was pretty exciting because I've got a connection to women's Olympic hockey from back in the day. And so that was exciting and new and fresh. And then last week we watched, Russia invade Ukraine. And that was hard and heavy and really, really rough. And, we asked the question of why? What's going on? Why are we doing what we're doing? Why do we do what we do? And, we asked the question, why is Putin doing what he's doing? And, what's his motivation? That's, I think, something that we all need to ask ourselves. Yesterday, when I was at church, heard a sermon talking about motivations and what drives us to do the things that we do. And, I hope you have a good reason for your why and a good reason for what you're doing. And, okay, this is the opening of episode 62 of Fresh Air at 5, the podcast that I'm recording this week. And I was privileged to listen to episode 29 of the Good News, Brad News podcast. This is Brad Hughes, one of my, just a warm cup of coffee kind of guy, and just genuine, down-to-earth, hat-on guest, Tim Stephenson, a friend of mine who is a teacher here out in British Columbia, just down the road at Walnut Grove Secondary School. Tim talks about his why, talks about his what makes him get up in the morning and go to work and teach students and see the hope and future in students. So very important that we believe in our students. I'll be right back. Gotta press pause, and I'll be right back. One more thing for February 28, 2022. And reflecting still on the Good News, Brad News podcast. And as Brad has on guest Tim Stephenson, Astro Stephenson from Walnut Grove Secondary in Langley. He's an educator that teaches there, and he's a husband and father. And you know what? If you haven't heard Tim's story, I would highly encourage you to take a listen to this episode that Brad has put out as he talks with Tim about his reason for doing and his why. And it's so exciting and awesome to call Tim a friend. And on Saturday morning, we got together at Starbucks and just sat down and talked about some life and talked about school and some science even. And I was listening to the news last week as, we're hearing the reports and the badness that's coming out of Ukraine and Europe, and with Russia invading and what the world is trying to do, and the sanctions issue. Something that came to mind as I heard, the European countries talking about sanctioning and the effect it'll have on their communities is one example was how Italy's wrestling with what to do with Russian sanctions, because Russia provides 40% of the natural gas, the fossil fuel that Italy needs to do things like heat their homes and to run their stoves. and things like that we've become so dependent on for fossil fuels. Immediately, just thinking about that, my mind turned back to some things that I read about and some, that Tim Stephenson has talked about our tie to fossil fuels and alternative energy. Not something new, but what are we doing to get our dependence away from our fossil fuels? Think about when the power goes out, how dependent are you on electricity? And can you do something else? All right, so there you go. Here's a connection to something that touched my heart. Take a listen to Tim's interview with Brad Hughes on episode 29 of the Good News Brad News show. And thanks, Brad. Thanks, Tim. Appreciate both of you guys. Okay, bye. One more thing for February 28, 2022, as I am walking around here and enjoying the beautiful morning. It's cloudy, not raining, crisp out, not frozen, so I'm enjoying it. And I listened to Mindset Monday with George Course. George, I love that music. It makes you smile. It does. That jingle that you got for Mindset Monday just makes me smile. It makes you smile. That's why you love it so much. I think you're like, I don't know why I love that, but I think it's because it just brings joy to our hearts and reminds us maybe, I don't know, of Peter Pan back in the day or something like that, and so fantastic to hear you this morning. And your podcast the episode is called It Never Hurts to Ask. And you know what? It never hurts to ask. If we don't ask, we won't know. It's better to know than to not know, as you put it, as you said that. So I think that's great advice that your mom gave you. And, it drives us to, ask some questions and seek some, information from people. And if we want something, just ask, and that's how I got into my grad program. I asked to be in an instructor's lab, and I asked, and I was persistent, and I didn't wait. I might have heard the no, but I didn't leave it at that. I asked again and again. Eventually I would stop, but eventually he let me in, so that's important. But the challenge with that is that when you get no's so many times, you keep on asking. And maybe that's a sign that you should stop. Or maybe it's a sign that it's not time yet. And one of those things is, about applying for leadership roles in the district. And, I've applied for a number and haven't been even given a nod or anything like that. Do I keep on doing that? So I think I need to. But just being okay with the no if it happens. So yes, that's important. All right, George, thanks. Thank you. This got kind of deep a bit there. Sorry about being somber there and being kind of down, but sometimes it happens. All right, have a great day. Talk to you guys. Hey, Tim, one last thing for February 28, 2022. Tim Cavey is who I'm referring to in this. Tim talked about Tim Stephenson earlier as he was on with Brad Hughes. Today, on my ears, but now I'm talking about Tim Cavey. And Tim Cavey brings us episode 218 of Teachers on Fire podcast, and how Tim talks about compassion over cancellation and seeing the humanity across the aisle. Tim, I appreciate that you brought this up and how we watch the world function today, and division and separation and conflict that happens so readily and easily in our social media and physical spaces. Seeing the humanity in people, we're all humans. We all are human beings, and we are all created in the image of God. And, we have a place and a reason. And just because I don't like what you have to say doesn't mean that you're less human than I am. And so it's so important that we pause and hear out our opponents and care about them, because they have maybe something to say that we haven't thought about. Not that we're going to turn and agree right away, but just to get us thinking. So important. We see Russia and Ukraine right now. And Tim, I don't think you recorded this episode before that invasion happened last week on Wednesday. But that's a big heavy. That's about a difference of opinions and how one is lording it over the other. And on the stage that we're on, watching in the world stage, and watching and participating, and it's affecting. And, the prices of food and gas are going to go up in my neighborhood as a result of what's going on over in Europe right now. So, yes, appreciate your thoughts, Tim. Thank you so much. Appreciate you. And look forward to getting together for coffee with you again soon. All right. Have a happy Monday, everybody. Enjoy your week and go be bold. All right. Bye. Hey, PLN February. No, you know what? It's March 2, 2022. So it's March now, and I missed the beginning of March yesterday because I didn't get up. But it's March 2nd, 2022. And this morning, I did get up, and I got up yesterday, but I didn't go for my walk yesterday for a couple reasons. I was really tired from Monday, from just working, and then I also took on a fundraising project. So we're raising some money for supporting Ukraine in emergency response through the Mennonite Central Committee here in British Columbia, and they're an international organization. And I am going to be giving money to them for emergency response. And how I'm doing that, on Sunday, right after we were at church, I sat down with my blue and yellow materials and I tied a blue and yellow fishing fly, a chironomid, and posted it on to a couple of Facebook pages and got a really crazy response of just, hand clapping and likes, which makes you feel good. But one guy in particular really challenged me. He says, you should make this into a charity. He goes, and if you do, I'll buy 10 flies from you. So I've been selling flies, and this one particular fly. And yesterday I tied a whole bunch. Monday I tied a whole bunch and got some orders out the door. And we're raising funds to support the Ukrainian people with emergency supplies and to help them out. All right, so that's what's been keeping me going. It made me tired yesterday, and so I didn't get up and go for a walk, and also prep for class because I tied too many bugs on Monday. But here we are today. Pouring rain, as you can see, completely coming down right now. But that's okay. That's all right. I got my jacket and staying warm and dry, and I got to listen to the EdTech March Madness EdTech bracket, and so I'll talk about that right away in another segment. Hang on. One more thing for March 2, 2022. So this morning I listened to Got Tech, the podcast, episode 106. As Kyle Niemis was a guest with Eric and Nick on the podcast. And Kyle has brought for the past 3 years the March Madness EdTech Showdown. And it's a bracket, a tournament bracket, where he's populated with various EdTech tools, some of the tools we love, and all the tools, many tools that we love, and has it come down to one winner. And so this year's bracket is up. Voting starts this afternoon at 3 o'clock p.m. Thanks, Kyle, for that. Check it out on Twitter only. It's the only place you can vote. But I will be taking a look at it. And I'm going to just say right now, I think Canva is going to take it this year. If Adobe Spark was still called Adobe Spark, I think it might have a shot. But no, I think that Canva is going to take it. Take a listen to these guys as they talk about their reasons for why they've picked their final four. I'm going with Canva, Screencastify, and you know what? I can't remember the other two categories right now because I've been talking too long and not thinking about that, and I haven't even seen physically in with my eyes the bracket yet. All right, so take a look at Kyle Niemis on Twitter, follow him, and jump in on your voting for what the top EdTech tool is for this year's March Madness bracket. Okay, have a good one, guys. Glad to hear your voices, and we'll talk to you soon. Okay, bye. One last thing for March 2, 2022. As I'm wrapping up Fresh Air at 5 this morning, I turned on the Burned In Teacher podcast, episode 126, I think. And Amber Harper brings us her latest episode called Dear Sad something depressed teacher. It's a blog article that she wrote years ago, and she reflects on that and how the journey's going. And Amber, your vulnerability and sharing about yourself here is so significant. I don't struggle with depression, but I have friends and and family members that do, and it is a big deal. It is hard. So I am just cheering you on as you continue to reach out to people and work through getting through this thing and making this thing called our one life the best it can be. So take a listen to this, people. Amber's got some great things to say. You know, I might have got the episode number wrong or the title wrong, but she's got it going on right. And take a listen to see what she has to say. And I encourage you to talk to somebody about how you're doing if you're not talking to somebody, and get active, do some things. This walking that I do in the mornings is so important for my own mental health, and clearing my head and breathing and exercising and listening to podcasts and learning and sharing my learning with you. All right, thanks all. Have a fabulous day. All right, it's Wednesday. Okay, bye. Hey PLN, Thursday, March 3rd, 2022. Good morning to you. Take a look behind me. The sky is starting to get light, and it is about just after 6 in the morning, and we're starting to see the sky getting lighter, which means the day's light is getting longer, and yeah, we're getting into spring. Loving it. So good to get out for a walk and see the light get brighter by the time I get home. Brings joy to my heart. It's funny, I can walk in the dark and it doesn't get me down, but I guess it does affect me. Okay. That's not what we're here for. We're here for hearing me talk about what I listened to this morning. And I went for my walk, feeling good. It's Thursday, prep for class, and I listened to the Tom Schimmer show. And I, honestly don't recall the episode. It'll be in the tweet, but I don't recall the episode number. It'll be in the show notes, so if you need to know, go find it there for the podcast. It's coming out on Friday. But it's the Tom Schimmer show, and he has on guest Tim Cavey. So you're looking for Tim Cavey in the list of podcast names for the Tom Schimmer show. And thanks, Tom, for your episode. It's been a few weeks since I've listened, but I'm glad to have listened. And the cold weather has really detracted from that, as you can tell, possibly. But yes, don't at me at the beginning about funny relationship we have with money. I really like that segment. It's challenging, and I encourage people to take a listen to that, because Tom talks about money and how we are really funny about it. He talks with Tim Cavey, and it's great to hear Tim's story and journey and different aspects of his life that we don't necessarily get to hear on his podcast. He talks about leadership and modeling. He talks about some assessment things, talks about EdTech, and it's a great warm conversation that Tim and Tom have about Tim Cavey, and finally about assessment and figuring out a final grade and looking at learning outcomes and about cognitive ability compared to learning progression. All right, thanks, Tom. Talk to you. Bye. Okay, I couldn't do it. So one more thing for March 3, 2022. At the end of the Tom Schimmer show episode with Tim Cavey, and I could have gone to look at the episode number just now, but I failed to because I was thinking about the assessment corner piece that Tom brings us today, where he had a listener question and they were talking about how to determine GPA and grades out of proficiency scale, and how do you do that? And Tom, this conversation today that you had, or the discussion you shared, was very helps me along my journey. Helps me for going, okay, what's that criteria in the rubric, and is it a learning progression that I'm presenting to the students, that you have not learned this, or you have learned this really well, or is it about the cognitive load or expectation of the learning standard, that everybody needs to meet the learning standard, but the degree at which you have done so. So I like your example about the cake, because that is meaningful to me, and how we bake a cake, whether we just bake a cake or we bake a masterpiece cake, or on the learning scale. All right, or the proficiency scale. All right, that's it for now. Have a great day. I will probably be out here again later today while I'm doing papers. Hope you have a fantastic Thursday. Peace. Bye. Hey PLN, it is later on March 3, 2022. 22 and I'm out for my afternoon walk delivering papers. The sun is shining and it's so beautiful to be outside this afternoon. I took in House of EdTech episode 196 as Chris brings us an episode power-packed with tips and suggestions of how we can improve our school's social media presence. And so, Chris, thanks so much for that great list of features. I'm going to shoot this off to Kyla Stuckart, our communications person of the district, and my principal as well, so that they can maybe take a listen and see what we can do to improve our presence on social media. We got lots of content that's being created, but are we sharing that? And that's so important to be considered so that we can be telling our own story as opposed to some other people telling our story. Tim Cavey on Teachers on Fire recently had a similar post talking about how are we using social media to tell our school story. So it's twice in about a week. So I guess that means we got to do something more about it, Chris. Thanks so much for the work you're doing. Appreciate it. Appreciate you. And I hope you're having a fabulous day out there in New Jersey. Signs of spring are all around us here. As you can see, we got grass green. We got no snow. We have, crocus is coming up. And so there's a picture of the crocus is right there for you to take a look at. Lots of great stuff is going on here. Days are getting longer and I am loving it. And it's really good. We got 6 days until spring break starts here. So hopefully we will have some spring while spring break is on. All right. Peace. Have a great day. Bye-bye. Hey, PLN Friday, March 4, 2022. Happy Friday afternoon to you. And I just wanted to jump in and get out for a walk this afternoon. Did so, listen to some tunes as I was walking. Not much to say about those tunes, except they were good. And so I'm just here. I'm actually reporting on something I listened to while I was sitting tying flies last night. And I was sitting at my desk and I listened to Beer Podcast EDU with Kyle and Ben and Ben Dixon. I think it's Ben Dixon. Yes, I think so. And Kyle Anderson. And so, gents, on episode 121, you had guest on Kristina Mattis, and you guys talked about growing up and being responsible and thinking about all kinds of things about adulting and the transition from the teaching sphere in a school, in a classroom, and what that looks like working for a school district to moving to private sector, as Kristina has recently made that transition, and how life is the same and how life is different. So that was a really good conversation. You should take a listen to it, people. Hear what they have to say. And, I really like the beers you guys talked about on this episode. Actually, it's pretty funny because you guys recorded this on 8 o'clock on a Saturday morning or something like that. So you're drinking coffee and tea and not drinking beers or talking about them. But, I have hooked up on Untapped app. And, so I'm there and I'm recording and saving all the beers that I drink, which is super fun. And Kristina, nice to hear your story a bit, and keep on doing the great work that you're doing. I like how you talk about having a plan and calming and pausing so that you can implement that plan as opposed to rushing forward to do emergency response in such a hurry that it is expensive and costly later. All right, we'll talk to you later. Have a great day, everybody. Happy Friday. Bye. My one word for 2021 is appreciate. I appreciate you giving me a listen as I've created this podcast experience for you. It's a unique Blinkist or Coles Notes version of the content I take in, like a highlight reel, so that you can hopefully find other interesting podcasts you may not have considered before. I've recorded the specific podcast episodes in the show notes for your learning convenience. Please subscribe so you don't miss any of my upcoming episodes. And if you enjoyed this podcast and its format, share it with someone else. Tweet about your experience or give it a review on Apple Podcast or wherever you listen to podcasts. Fresh Air at 5 can also be found on Voice Ed Radio. Your voice is right here, and on the Education Podcast Network, Podcasts for Educators, Podcasts by Educators. I hope you have a fantastic day and get some fresh air before the day is out, and take care of yourself because you're worth it.